Here at USDA NIFA to share one of the activities, the many activities that we have planned to celebrate this very special week known as National 4-H Week. And part of our plan this week was to celebrate our history as well as our future. And so today I'm excited to introduce our colleagues from the USDA National Agricultural Library to share about the 4-H collections. So now I'll turn it over to Sara Lee.
Hello, everyone. This is Sara Lee. I'm the NAL Special Collections Lead Librarian, and I'm joined today by Daniel Weddington, an NAL Digital Archivist. Please join us now for our virtual tour of 4-H-related collections and publications in the National Agricultural Library. The NAL Special Collections selects, preserves, describes, and provides access to items of enduring historical value, including rare books, manuscript collections, nursery and seed trade catalogs, photographs, posters, and other physical and digital content related to the history of agriculture. This includes materials related to the history of USDA and some of its affiliated groups, such as 4-H. While we aren't the official record keepers for 4-H, and you can find many state and chapter level historical materials in the libraries and archives of their home states, as a national library, we hold significant physical and digital collections related to the history of the organization. As luck would have it, most of our 4-H materials can be found in 4 major collections: the Elsie Carper Collection, the Payne National 4-H Fellowship Collection, the 4-H Artwork Collection, and a variety of 4-H publications available in NAL's General Collection. Over the course of this presentation, we will highlight some of the materials and major themes, and we'll wrap up with a few selections from past National 4-H weeks. Before we start talking about the collections, though, it's helpful to have a general overview of the history of 4-H. Thanks to the 4-H History Preservation Group for researching the history of 4-H and making it available on 4HHistorypreservation.com. A combination of economic and social factors, including individuals working independently to solve similar agricultural challenges throughout the country, led to the establishment of 4-H. One of the first people to do this was school principal A.B. Graham of Ohio. In 1901, he began to promote out-of-school clubs for rural children to learn about agriculture. In 1902, Graham formed a club of boys and girls who were given official hands-on projects, attended meetings, and recorded their accomplishments. To do this, Graham sought and received the assistance of the Ohio Agricultural Experiment Station and Ohio State University. At the time, researchers at public universities were finding that young people were more open to agricultural experiments than their parents, and seen as a means to introduce agricultural discoveries developed on campuses to their communities. Another pioneer of 4-H was O.J. Kern, County Superintendent of Schools in Winnebago County, Illinois. He is noted primarily for the relationship between one-room schools and teaching agriculture and gardening principles from the university, particularly the introduction of hybrid corn. He formally started a Farmer Boys Experiment Club in his office in 1902. Also in 1902, the USDA hired Seaman Knapp to promote better farming methods in the South. Faced with the assignment of dealing with the boll weevil insects destroying the cotton crop in Texas, Knapp successfully provided new information to farmers by using demonstration plots. In 1912, Congress authorized an appropriation to USDA Bureau of Plant Industries Office of Farm Management to do farm demonstration work. Oscar H. Benson served as a federal agent for the Farm Management Office. He expanded Boys and Girls Club work in cooperation with agricultural colleges in northern and western states. Because of these youth cooperative agreements, Permanent youth work was included in the 1914 USDA Cooperative Extension Service legislation known as the Smith-Lever Act. What started as a small-scale farm youth club expanded to the national and international organization focused on leadership, responsibility, cooperation, self-confidence, and quality workmanship that it is today. As you can tell, 4-H has a long history, and much of that history is captured in the Elsie Carper collection on Extension Service, Home Economics, and 4-H. Who was Elsie Carper? In a few words, she was the institutional memory of 4-H at USDA. Elsie Josephson Carper was employed by the USDA Extension Service in 4-H from 1944 through 1983. She started her extension work with the Home Demonstration and 4-H Youth Development Unit. In her administrative position, she watched as the National 4-H program evolved from a farm-oriented youth movement into a national leadership and educational program. During her tenure, Carper collected and organized materials saved by program leaders and extension specialists, used state statistical data to devise a national enrollment report, worked with the 4-H subcommittee of the Extension Committee on Policy to track 4-H policy developments, and was actively involved in the purchase and development of the National 4-H Center in Chevy Chase, Maryland, as the permanent site for the National 4-H Conference. Carper conducted the majority of the background research for the 1980 history of the 4-H program, the 4-H piece of the Cooperative Extension System's 75th year history, and the National Association of Extension 4-H Agents' 50th anniversary. Upon retirement in 1983, she volunteered at the National 4-H Council as a historian in the 4-H Reference and Resource Center. In 2002, Carper was presented with 4-H's most prestigious honor, the National Partner in 4-H Award. The Elsie Carper collection includes photographs, correspondence, newspaper articles, reports, music, posters, and much more spanning 1908 through 1994. Thanks to Jan Scholl, 4-H curriculum specialist for Penn State at the time, and Kate Hayes, technical information specialist at the National Agricultural Library. The collection was organized in 2003. Special Collections librarian Barbara Stommel completed an online collection guide in 2008. Historic photographs are one of the treasures of this collection. There are hundreds of photographs covering most of the 20th century. Highlights capture agricultural and home economics activities, from tractor driving and animal exhibition to canning, baking, and sewing. In this photograph, an assistant home demonstration agent is teaching insect control to 4-H club members composed of Mexican girls in Wharton County, Texas in 1939. Here, 4-H uses its resources to help the Army and Red Cross in World War II. The purchase of the $1,500 field ambulance was made possible through the contribution of 716 agricultural 4-H clubs, 709 home economics clubs, and 30 other interested individuals and organizations. Enough money was raised to purchase the ambulance and Red Cross Overseas kits. In Franklin M. Reck's book, The 4-H Story, Reck writes about the history of African American demonstration work, primarily in the American South. Reck recounts the appointment of the pioneer agent Thomas Campbell, who was a student of George Washington Carver, the peanut farmer and Tuskegee professor who worked with USDA. Carver introduced Campbell to Seaman Knapp, who employed Campbell to travel the country showing farmers how to improve poor land. 4-H was a segregated organization during the early 20th century and remained so until the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Prior to the 1960s, African American 4-H clubs were administered by a separate system of black agricultural colleges and extension agents. The photos here document some of the food and nutrition work of the African American clubs during the 1950s. 4-H involved not just the preparation of food, but the production as well. Youth needed to understand the use and maintenance of farm equipment in order to successfully grow crops. This 1951 photograph shows 4-H leader training, in which Ralph Walker, who's on the right in a shop coat, a representative of John Deere Company of Omaha, instructs 4-H tractor club leaders in maintenance techniques. A Native American 4-H group learns how to transfer a pattern to cloth in a demonstration by their leader, Mrs. Florabelle Enote, seated at the sewing machine. These girls are students at the Rama Navajo School, a boarding school operated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs for Children from the Navajo Reservation. Their 4-H club is made up of students at the school. This photograph shows a 1950s group of city youth as junior chefs. These children are part of a larger group of 500 boys and girls in Buffalo, New York, who are participating in the 4-H club program. Others are carrying projects in beautification, learning nursery and greenhouse work, sewing, woodworking, and electricity, making career and farm city study tours, much as rural 4-Hers did. The next category of materials in the Elsie Carper collection is a group of bound documents from 1915 through 1917 of correspondence and writings related to boys and girls club work. Many of these were produced and printed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's States Relations Service, Office of Extension Work. It is titled Cooperative Extension Work in Agriculture and Home Economics. You can see some of the topics listed. Home gardens, growing vegetables, and canning are major themes. There are a lot of instructions and recipes in this document. Oscar H. Benson's files, dating from 1913 to 1926, contain a wealth of information on home canning in girls and boys clubs, correspondence bearing prominent national program leaders' signatures, and news articles reporting botulism deaths and botulism in canned olives. Originally a school teacher and later Wright County, Iowa school superintendent, Oscar Herman Benson started in the Farmers Cooperative Extension Work Office in 1911 and 1 year later became the first federal agent in the Office of Farm Management, responsible for developing Boys and Girls Club in the North and West. Along with promoting the use of the four-leaf clover symbol for 4-H, he is credited with state youth cooperative program agreements that integrated youth work into the 1914 legislation, creating the Cooperative Extension Service. Benson's assistant, George Farrell, traveled the north and western parts of the country in 1914, teaching canning to state extension workers. Here you see Mr. Farrell demonstrating proper canning techniques and tools. One newsworthy event was scaring the nation in 1917. What was happening with ripe olives and botulism? Articles and documents found in Benson's canning collection answer these questions. Newspaper reports stated that certain canned olive brands were causing people to die. The Literary Digest printed causes of the olive poisoning found, and that it was the rings made by a Midwest manufacturer. USDA had to intervene and test what was causing the bacteria to grow. Scientists found that the bacteria only developed in perfectly sealed containers. Therefore, the botulism was not the result of leaky rubber rings and glass jars. Imperfect sterilization was behind the growth, and food needed to be cooked more than the 212 degrees Fahrenheit recommended to canners. It's heartening to know that the science of canning and preservation continued improving over the years. Next, we turn to the materials of the nationwide 4-H Youth Staff Development and Training Program. This section deals with the development of the 4-H study internship program and opportunities for graduate students, extension staff, adult volunteers, and teen leaders. The interns studied and gained hands-on experience in 4-H staff development and training, teaching, and planning activities at the National 4-H Center in Washington, D.C. The resulting intern reports produced from 1972 to 1981 are part of the collection. Some of the topics studied were volunteer development and management, the role of fairs in the 4-H program, teaching teens, life leadership skills, and art appreciation in 4-H.
The Elsie Carper collection also contains a variety of visual art and music materials. The National 4-H Poster Series contains 36 poster selections from 1946 to 1982. Each year, a poster design was produced to promote 4-H's yearly motto and was distributed to state and county extension offices. Seen here is the 4-H's for Us design from 1970, A New Day, A New Way on the left from 1972, and We Can Make It Happen on the right from 1974. Keep these bold, bright 1970s designs in mind when we take a look at some of the commission paintings from the 1950s later on in the presentation. 4-Hers know that music plays a big part in meetings and camp. If you're looking to add a few tunes to your sing-along repertoire, the Elsie Carper collection contains an extensive selection of 4-H sheet music dating from 1929 to 1970. During the Depression years of the 1930s, writers and composers were solicited for plays, skits, songs, and recreational activities to uplift the spirits of young people and farm families. In addition to the National 4-H Club Songbook from 1954 seen here, the collection contains the 4-H Pledge and Motto, a pep song, marches, and camp bugle calls. In addition to sheet music, we also have a selection of 78 RPM and 33 1/3 RPM recordings. These include 4-H club songs and bugle calls, as well as 1960s public service radio spots featuring well-known personalities of the time, such as Ted Williams, Ann Landers, Anita Bryant, and Bob Hope. Ready to get inspired? Let's listen to a snippet of Fred Waring and Jack Dolph's triumphant A Place in the Sun, performed and recorded by Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians in 1949. As you listen, notice how the head, heart, hands, and health motto was woven into the final lines of the song.
Oh, give me a place in the sun with a warm, sweet earth below, where the fields are clean with the living green that my hands have made to grow. Here's a health to the land that my head and hand and heart have learned to know. Oh, give me a place in the sun with a warm, sweet earth below, where the fields are clean with the living green that my hands have made to grow. Here's a health to the land that my head and hand and heart have learned to know.
Moving on after our wonderful musical interlude, I'm going to provide historical background of the subject of our next collection. Gertrude Warren, known as the mother of 4-H, was appointed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1917 to lead the development of the USDA canning program for girls. Warren, a former Columbia University Teachers College home economics teacher, was the first to use the term 4-H clubs to describe extension youth clubs in a 1918 federal document, Organization and Results of Boys and Girls Club Work. Later in her USDA career at the Office of Cooperative Extension, she recognized that young people could benefit from learning how their community life linked up with that of the nation and the relationships of their own county government to that of the state and national government. She knew of the custom of the U.S. Department of Agriculture to have two of the outstanding boys and girls of each state come to Washington in June as representatives of their state 4-H organizations. With these ideas in mind and the support of the Payne Fund of New York City, the National 4-H Club Fellowship was established in 1931 as a 2 to 5 year experiment promoting citizenship among youth. What was the National 4-H Club Fellowship? It was awarded by the Payne Fund and consisted of the following: 2 fellowships of $1,000 each, one for a girl and one for a boy, awarded for 9 months residence and study at the U.S. Department of Agriculture for 1931 to 1932. Qualifications required of the candidates were a college degree in agriculture or home economics, 4 years participation in 4-H club work with interest continuing through college, a definite interest in extension work in agriculture or home economics, not over 25 years of age, and graduation at the final college or university commencement for the academic year 1930 to 1931. No one section of the country was awarded the same fellowship in 2 consecutive years. Each state had the privilege of nominating 1 young man and 1 young woman who had shown outstanding ability in school and club work and who gave great promise of future leadership in agriculture and home economics. The Office of Cooperative Extension accepted responsibility for introducing the successful candidates to this storehouse of knowledge at the U.S. Department of Agriculture as it related to the other departments of the federal government and various states. After the first year of fellowships, there were some changes. Compulsory courses on research and extension and the development of the extension programs and other recommended postgraduate courses offered by the USDA Graduate School were added. Each fellow had to decide on a research project which would be his or her major occupation of the year. Fellows would study relationships in the Department of Agriculture and how the financial side of government operates. The fellows would prepare a report of each month's activities. Esther, pictured here, wrote in her last report, "One of the most delightful and educational years of my life." Although the initial fellowships, sponsored by Payne Fund, were viewed as a success, S. Howard Evans of this organization was unable to raise funds due to economic conditions. Therefore, the Executive Committee of the Payne Fund chose to discontinue its annual grant for the maintenance of the fellowships beyond 1938 and 1939. The National Committee on Boys and Girls Club Work, a non-governmental committee that provided a way for business and industry to support 4-H, became interested in sponsoring 2 fellowships beginning in 1939. This was probably due to the influence of Kenneth H. Anderson, a 1937-38 fellow who had joined the committee's staff following the completion of his fellowship. The committee continued the grants for 22 years with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, selecting the recipients and supervising their studies. The name of the grants was changed from the National 4-H Club Fellowship to the National 4-H Fellowship. Through arrangements made by the National Committee, the National 4-H Fellowships increased from 2 to 6 when the Massey Harris Company, later known as Massey Ferguson, became a benefactor of the program in 1953. Their sponsorship resulted in an additional 64 fellowships during the remaining 16 years of the fellowship program. There was also one sponsorship by the Successful Farming magazine and the E.T. Meredith Foundation in 1961 to 62. There were a total of 131 fellows from 1931 to 1969, excluding World War II, when no fellowships were awarded, and the Korean conflict. Materials saved by some of the former fellows include fellowship application and notification telegram, and you can see here Joe McAuliffe's acceptance telegram, newspaper clippings or publications with articles regarding the fellows' receipt of the fellowship or their eventual career work, biographical information, works published by any of the fellows, schedule of appointments for the fellows. For some fellows, scrapbooks were a perfect keepsake for the items saved during the fellowship. Scrapbooks documented activities and events such as exploring local landmarks, attending plays, exploring historical sites, going to concerts, going to the beach. They contained items I just described, plus correspondence related to the fellowship, notes, journals, or fellowship activities, unique memorabilia related to the activities, invitations or programs, conference materials, and travel brochures. The 1968-69 fellows were even invited to the presidential inauguration. Prior to 2008, 2 fellows began compiling history of the Payne National 4-H Fellowship Program. Harlan G. Copeland and V. Joseph McAuliffe embarked on a project in true 4-H fashion. They queried former fellows for documents, photographs, publications, and other memorabilia regarding their year in Washington, D.C. Using the information they received, together they wrote Windows to a Wider World, the Payne National 4-H Fellowships, 1931 to 1969, and it was published in 2008. Subsequently, Mr. Copeland arranged for archival storage of the Fellows' materials in special collections. The library already held the monthly reports of the Fellows. In October of 2008, many of the Fellows returned to Washington, D.C. for a reunion at the National 4-H Conference Center. Our previous head of Special Collections, Susan Fugate, had the privilege of attending the reunion to document the occasion for the library's collection.
Elsie Carper's poster collection isn't the only place in NAL to find 4-H artwork. When the 4-H Council vacated its building on Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase, Maryland last year, the History Committee donated its collection of paintings to Special Collections for safekeeping. Much of the artwork was commissioned by Brown & Bigelow Calendar Company in St. Paul, Minnesota, for calendars produced between 1951 and 1978. The early works seen here were painted by William C. Griffith, who painted 16 4-H calendar covers between 1953 and 1968, and 18 National 4-H poster illustrations, making Griffith the most prolific artist of official 4-H paintings. The Brown & Bigelow calendars were sold to businesses to give as gifts to their clients and to promote 4-H in their communities. Royalties from the sale of these calendars helped to purchase and restore the buildings on the campus of the National 4-H Conference Center throughout the 6-decade calendar program. Seen here is the 1973 calendar and its accompanying original painted by Mayo Olmsted. Olmsted, who is primarily known for pinup and pulp paperback cover art, painted as many as 8 calendar covers for Brown & Bigelow, of which National 4-H owns 5 originals. On your left is another Olmsted painting, this one portraying 4-Hers under the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. in 1975. Of note is the gradual increase in diversity representation in official 4-H materials over the course of the mid-century, evident in this and Olmsted's previous 1970s work, especially when contrasted with the official paintings from the 1950s. Moving from the visual arts back to the written word, if you're looking to read up on 4-H history, look no further than NAL's general publication collection. As one of the largest agricultural libraries in the world, NAL houses 8 million volumes of materials. Best of all, you can access a lot of these publications online via the Internet Archive. NAL partners with Internet Archive to scan publications from our general collection and make them freely available to you no matter where you are. A quick search for 4-H will turn up thousands of related items from NAL for your research and reuse. Our largest Internet Archive collection related to the history of 4-H is the Extension Service Review. Issued monthly by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the review promoted and provided guidance on, quote, the newest findings in agriculture and home economics to county, state, and federal extension educators. We make available nearly 700 issues from 1920 to 1992, including this 1970 issue celebrating the National Agricultural Library's move from the USDA South Building in Washington, D.C. to its current location in Beltsville, Maryland. Of particular interest for National 4-H Week is the Report to the Nation, a publication presented to the President of the United States and the Secretary of Agriculture for National 4-H Week in 1961. The report contains profiles of selected club members visiting Washington, D.C. for the event, as well as photographs showcasing 4-H work across the United States and abroad. Other highlights of the publication collection include leadership development training materials, Who's Who at the National 4-H Club Camp, the Capital Clover Do's and News of 4-H Camp, historical guides and manuals covering everything from horses and entomology to setting up camp, and tons of colorful, informative pamphlets. We can't possibly showcase everything we have to offer here, so make sure to visit our Internet Archive collection to discover more. If you need help with a specific topic or looking for a particular title, the staff at NAL are always available to help.
Last but not least, we come to our National 4-H Week materials. Here is some background information about the week. Prior to World War II, National 4-H camps were held in the spring in Washington, D.C. Because of national security needs during wartime, the Federal Extension Service held National 4-H Mobilization Week to encourage 4-H members to produce foods needed by rural men and women in the armed services, enlist youth in all rural areas, particularly those living on farms, in some phase of the 4-H Club War Program, and to report on 4-H Club work in progress. After the war, the week was renamed National 4-H Week. There were 5 purposes: advertise to the public an expanded 4-H program with more ways for youth to participate, encourage more youth to join 4-H, urge more men and women to volunteer as 4-H leaders, recognize parents' contributions to 4-H, and report the year's 4-H accomplishments and plan for the year ahead. Each year, a national theme was designated around which the week's observance was focused. Beginning in 1968, National 4-H Week was moved from spring to the first full week of October. This made it timely for recruiting 4-H members and leaders. The Elsie Carper collection includes 4 National 4-Week kits from 1964 through 1968. These kits were created by Federal Extension Service staff with the cooperation of 2 non-governmental organizations helping to further 4-H, the National 4-H Service Committee in Chicago and the National 4-H Club Foundation in Washington, D.C. A press kit was sent to an extension worker in each county to aid in committee planning for the week. Communications specialists and county workers throughout the country provided a plethora of advertising ideas. They were also told, but don't hesitate to think up and try some daring new methods which may bring you big dividends. Dividends equated to expanding 4-H program opportunities to more boys and girls throughout the country. The kits contain so much information that they could be used all year round for 4-H publicity needs. What types of materials were in the kits? The President's message was on letterhead from the White House to 4-H club members on their value and service. Proclamation ideas written for governors, county judges, commissioners, and mayors. The fact sheet provided the latest national 4-H figures and other up-to-date information. The planning guide, for example, how to plan an exhibit booth, how to expand 4-H, how to round up alumni, how to visit newspapers, and planning signing time for media coverage. A theme poster was included for placement in store windows, prominent places, and exhibits at state and county fairs. Leaflets were developed by the National 4-H Foundation and the National 4-H Service Committee, including suggestions for 4-H international projects and activities. Visual aids like the illustration above was prepared by the visual specialist of the Federal Extension Service. And lastly, there was a document called Good Ideas from the States. And some of these ideas were making a set of colored slides to explain the local 4-H programming in an appealing manner, flying the 4-H flag over a courthouse, having 4-H name tags or pins worn by business people, in shopping centers where 4-H exhibits were on display. And there was one instance of a county legislation delegate receiving a cake bearing the 4-H emblem, and the cake was accompanied with a 4-H report. Club council officers, meaning the youth, made arrangements and baked the cakes. Here is an example of a publicity guide from the 1968 kit. The author strongly suggests get 4-H on radio and television, call on station personnel 2 to 4 weeks before 4-H week, supplement outside material with personal presentations, and select participants who have a story to tell, who can tell it effectively. Each should have a clear voice, pleasing appearance, and 4-H identification. There were also radio spot announcements, and these provided already worded scripts that you could choose from. And here are 2 examples. Mini skirts, mods, and monkeys. They're part of being young. So is 4-H. 2 3/4 million young Americans think it's groovy. Think it over. During National 4-H Week, September 30th to October 7th, you'll have special chances to join 4-H. Don't miss it. Or, if you've ever read a paper, turned on TV, or listened to radio, you know the world has problems, big problems. 4-H counterpart programs in developing countries around the world are doing something about hunger and illiteracy. You can help. Join 4-H during National 4-H Week, September 30th to October 7th. In true 4-H fashion, we want to finish by bestowing upon you a participation medal for joining us here today. This bronze medal is a participant's badge from the 3rd National 4-H Camp held in Washington, D.C. in 1929. It was purchased at a flea market in 2013 by U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service scientist Dr. Gary L. Miller and his wife Melissa K. Miller, who later donated it to NAL. Now we present it to you in virtual form to thank you for allowing us to share some of our collections with you during this year's National 4-H Week.
So thank you, Sarah and Daniel, for sharing with all of us a slice of 4-H's history during this very important week. Sarah and Daniel are here. If you want to ask some questions of them, you can type in the chat pod And if there is a raise your hand at the bottom of the screen, I can unmute you if you want to ask your question verbally. So we have a great question. One of our colleagues has asked, how can states add materials to the collections or resources?
Hello, this is Sarah talking. Thanks for your question. You could be in touch with any of us at Special Collections at the National Agricultural Library. Feel free to email us at NAL Special Collections at USDA.gov or call us at 301-504-5876.
We have another question. What are some of the surprising things you have discovered in the archives?
Well, we were really thrilled to find the songbooks. Daniel and I both have a special interest in music, and there's quite a variety of interesting songs. And the fact that there were competitions done throughout the country to propose some of these excellent songs, that was really neat to find out. We also found it interesting reading through some of the fellows monthly reports. It was interesting for our perspective to learn about some of the people that they met during that time period. So in answering reference questions about USDA history, you come across similar names quite a bit, and it was just really fascinating to find information in the reports of how they had taught some of these fellows information about USDA and agricultural science, whatever their specialty was within USDA. So that's what interested me in particular. I don't know if Daniel has any favorites from this.
Yeah, I was excited to find that some of the recordings were available on Internet Archive already, that we were able to share that with you. I was surprised to find out that Olmsted's, the painter for that was commissioned during the 70s, had like a whole second career doing like pulp paperback novels, like Westerns and that kind of thing. So in the course of looking at Olmsted's history, I ran into that. So that was a lot of fun.
Right, we have a question. Is the Norman Rockwell County Agent painting in your collection?
I know we have it. It isn't actually in the 4-H collection, but it's in we have another collection of USDA photos. So we do have a print of it there.
Right, great. We have some comments about the songs, and that we all thought we had all the 4-H history down. And then of course, there's something new that surprises us. It's very exciting to see all the collections and resources that you have captured over the years, and those to come from individuals on this webinar that want to contribute to furthering the collection. Are there any other questions? So what are some projects that people created from the archives? Can you share that?
Projects. Well, we've had some researchers come in, and frequently this is a typical request of Special Collections, is that they're writing a history, sometimes a dissertation, and what they're looking for is photographs to back up some of the explanations in their stories. So I know we had a couple instances of researchers being really happy at finding information in our collections. We also have worked over the years with Jan Scholl, who was at Penn State, and she did a couple of stories. One was all about films and video AV type things that came about as a result of 4-H, and I know she discovered a video of the very first two Payne fellows and shared that with us, and it was very interesting to hear and see them speak about their time with the fellowship. And so that was one of the fascinating things. And publications, we're always asked about what do we have available digitally for the public, and throughout our stacks, we've got thousands of materials on 4-H, and those are available through searching Internet Archive, and you never know what you can find in there. In fact, we had no idea that there was a picture of the NAL building on that extension service publication. So it's really great to be able to search the text in these publications, and it has a variety of history in it, not just 4-H. So those are some of the ways that I can think of off the top of my head of how they've been used.
Right, do we have any other questions for our presenters today? Oh, so how do we decide what we should save now for the future? It's a great question.
Right. Especially, I think in this day and age, there's a lot of interest in providing information out to the public so that it doesn't have to be remade again. So in terms of 4-H, I know a lot of the training guides and manuals are something that could be of interest, especially as it was mentioned in the National 4-H Week kit. Some of those ideas, even though they're outdated, they're still great for now. So I would say anything that documents what's going on in the organization and how the work was done, and especially the visual aspects, I think everybody finds so pleasing to look at the photographs and the videos. Those are important, and they really need to be have captions on them. That's one thing that unfortunately sometimes you get photographs donated and there's nothing to go along with it, and really that is so important to capture that information. So those are some of the things I can think of. And just another thing, we are working with the 4-H history preservation group, and they have I think at least 80 boxes of materials that they are going through, and some of those are pretty old. And we're going to be working together to identify what can be added to our webpage, and if they have additional historical facts that can supplement what we just shared with you. So anyway, you could be in contact with us if there's any questions. We're very happy to see anything you might have and give ideas, and thanks for asking that.
Any other questions? Oh, we have another one. So are any efforts made by ECOP to capture that information from states, a collective effort of states' information? So I can go ahead and take that question. Yeah. So I think this is a great thing to bring to the attention of ECOP 4-H, and I happen to represent NIFA on that group as the liaison, and I will be happy to share this webinar and the interest and the excitement and the opportunities to archive our history at an organizational level as well as at the state and local level. So thank you for that wonderful reminder that at all levels we want to collect and archive things that reflect our experiences and may be informative to those moving forward or of interest. So thank you for that question. And I will carry that back to ECOG 4-H. Right, I see lots of well done's, and I wanted to let everyone know that we will make this presentation available on our website, and I will send out a message about that, letting everyone know when it's available. So thank you for your time and our kickoff to National 4-H Week. Stay tuned for more exciting opportunities and activities. And I want to thank our presenters today. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.